Colin Canet here from Woodwork Web. You know, as woodworkers, we're often called upon to make seemingly simple things. For example, picture frames. Now, picture frames sound like a simple thing to make, but in fact, with four 45-degree corners, they can be quite complex. The problem is if you're off by only 1 degree on each of the 4 corners, that equals 4 degrees in total. Plus, each of the sides need to be exactly the same length. If they're not, you'll have even more problems. Today, we're going to show you how to make picture frames with your table saw quickly and easily and with unbelievable accuracy with very few tools. So stick around and we'll show you exactly how to do that. Okay, the tools for making picture frames are pretty simple. You're going to be using the miter gauge that came with your table saw. The other thing you're going to need is an engineer's square, 45-degree angle engineer's square. These are very accurate, and you'll see how accurate when we get using this. Now, if you have a 45-degree builder's square, this is not accurate enough for picture framing, so put that aside and get yourself a good square. The other thing we're going to be using, you're going to need to find yourself about a 2.5-inch absolutely straight board and another little piece of scrap. Now, you've probably got these around your shop right now. These are going to be critical in making your picture frames. So let's see what we can do about putting this together. Okay, let's go about making picture frames. Now, we'll assume that you have your picture frame material that you're going to be making your picture frames out of. The next thing to do is to attach your guide board to your miter gauge. And once you've attached this guide board to your miter gauge, you're actually going to be lining it up with the blade in your table saw, and that's what's going to give you the accurate cuts. I actually have screws already on mine, and my miter gauge has some slots, like most miter gauges, to attach an auxiliary fence, and that's exactly what this is going to be doing. Is going to be like an auxiliary fence on your miter gauge. So just attach that, and we'll go on to the next step. Now, the next step is to use your engineer's square and line up your blade, and you're going to need to raise your blade quite high so you get lots of bite on it, lots of angle, and just line up very precisely. Take a few minutes to do it so that it's absolutely accurate. Line up your table saw exactly with your miter gauge fence extension. Now, the next thing that's going to happen, now that you're going to be able to cut exactly perfect 45-degree angles, the next critical thing is the length, and this is the key to using this long fence extension on your miter gauge. Now, you can do two things. When I first experimented with this, I just simply used a block and clamped that at certain distance, 2 different distances, one for the rails and one for the stiles of the frame. I've got a little bit more advanced now, and I've got still a scrap piece of wood, but now I actually have a slide on top that I can move it back and forth. That way I know that it's absolutely perpendicular to the guide, the extension on the miter gauge. So once you've got that, you need to set your distance, how long your rails or stiles are going to be. But before you do that, you really want to make one cut on each of your boards, and we'll do that right now. In order to make the rails and stiles the proper length, you first need to make one 45-degree cut on just one end of all the rails and all the stiles. This end will then be set against the stop block on the guide rail for making the final cut,
which will be then the final length of both your rails and stiles.
Okay, what I've done now is I've cut one angle on every one of the frame sides, just on one side. The other side is going to be left plain because that's the side. Right now it doesn't matter how long it is because we're going to be trimming the other side, and that's what we need to measure up, and that's where the block is going to be critical because now it's going to make sure that both sides are going to be absolutely the same length. Okay, now I've set my glide blocks and clamped it, just a simple clamp on there, and now I'm going to be running through the two short sides of the frame, of the picture frame.
Both short sides and both long sides of the picture frame need to be the same length. So right here we're starting off by cutting off the short sides of the frame, and both short sides are going to be exactly the same length because both of them were cut using the same stop block against the rail, the guide rail.
Okay, I just measured from the blade to the stop to pick the distance that I want for the longer side, and I'm just going to go now and cut those. And there we have two perfect length picture frames, absolutely 45 degrees and absolutely the right length. So let's have a look now and see if they actually will go together. Okay, I've just aligned these now against my square here, and you can see that these, now I haven't glued this yet, but you can see that these edges are absolutely tight, the frame is absolutely square, and all of the edges are going to go together just perfectly, just the way a picture frame should. And so that's how easy it is to make perfect picture frames. All you need is a good engineer's square, a straight block, and a guide to ride up against your miter gauge. And you too can make perfect picture frames every time. You can make one, or you can make hundreds of them. They'll all be accurate. Now there's more to making picture frames. For example, cutting the picture frame material. We have another video for that, so watch for that. And also gluing picture frames together. I like to make bigger picture frames, and gluing them together can be a bit of a challenge. So we have a way to make a gluing jig that you can actually make yourself in your shop. So have a look for that video as well. Colin Cadet from Woodwork Web.